Hi all, let's talk about Douglas Murray, my most favourite commentator, the man who has got a lot to say about usually nothing at all. However, he seems to get a lot of play on Sky News. He was back again, paid whatever it is that they pay him to spout his crap. The human excrement is about talking about something which concerns him primarily because this man who's got a silver spoon stuck up his ass, is talking about wanting to have the UK return back to its previous glory. A time of Thatcherism and a time where no one gave a shit about the poor people, the people that were being charged incredible taxes, the fact that subscription was on the go and that the Falklands War was a must. None of those things seem to matter to this man because he wants to go back to that time, because he believes that the UK leadership has lost the courage and the guts to be as anal as he would like to be. So I'm going to play this video clip to you now. Some people will comment that they haven't seen the whole clip. I will put the clip in the comment section below so that you naysayers can have a look at it for yourself. Now, I want you to remember, this is my opinion alone. I'm entitled to have these opinions because anybody can who has access to the internet and who has a YouTube channel. So here is what he has to say. Now, speaking to Rita Pants on Fire, who is seriously has to be one of the worst interviewers of our time. But nevertheless, she's on Sky News doing her thing, as do most people on Sky News, spouting absolute crap and convincing everybody that they should think like excuse the term to that person who objected to me using this term, a right-winger. But nevertheless, this is why Douglas Murray is on, to talk about this particular issue in terms of going back to the way UK should be according to him.
Now let's move along to your home country. You wrote a powerful piece for The Spectator today where you said you're embarrassed by modern Britain and that you no longer even...
Well, actually, on this sense, I can understand his embarrassment. So I do accept that there are elements of the British government, particularly Sunak, and the Conservative government, and the fact that they've had people like Johnson, and they've had that lettuce woman trust. They've had those people involved in their politics, and I'll tell you what, I'd be ashamed of it too, a bit like Abbott and Morrison here in Australia.
Recognise your own country. Why is that?
Well, it's several things. One is the fact that, as I say in that piece, virtues and certain aspects of the national characteristic, which I grew up with, and which I think epitomized Britain, like a sort of certain doggedness, a sort of stoicism, and actually I think a courage in the face of adversity, a quiet courage, which was strong when provoked, all seem to have disappeared. There's endless sort of...
What I think intrigues me most about this commentary is that times have changed. We've become a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more politically correct, whether you like that term or not. We see people differently. There's been an immigration problem in the UK because they just don't like anybody who's not white and white like him. And the other comment I wish to make about Douglas Murray is the posh accent he puts on. Now, he came from a middle-class family, good for him, went to Eton and so forth. Obviously a very smart man. Not going to dispute any of that whatsoever. However, his politics is a wee bit skewed because he also, I think, he wants to be an aristocrat. This is what he's craving for. And he's certainly craving for relevance. There's no disputing that because, the books he writes and the times that he appears on Piers Morgan and the other shows that he does, and particularly Sky News. So this man requires relevance, and Sky News is certainly endeavouring to give that to him. And you can see that, I think, in the way he speaks and the things and the topics that he chooses to speak about.
Whining. The House of Commons this week spent its time talking about whether or not the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, should have made a reference to trans people that wasn't 100% politically correct in the eyes of the left, whilst the mother of a murdered trans child was in the gallery of the Commons, and they all were just out competing each other to be more and more invasive about that. Meantime, massive problems affecting the country, like the fact we have these hate marches every Saturday, in which people are completely, mainly Muslims, are completely unbothered about.
Now, I just need to comment about the language. Firstly, they are not hate marches, they are protesters. And this is something within a democracy one is entitled to do, I understand. However, he would like to go back to the UK or the old times, the Thatcher times, when marches were banned. This is what he thinks is important, is that his view, and only his view, should be the view that most of us are aware of or hear.
Exposing their bigotries, their hatreds, including their hatred of Britain. This just goes on all the time. Every Saturday it happened again.
And he doesn't expose his own hatred of Muslims and Islamophobia for him is a key motivator. I think this is the way he thinks about the world.
And last Saturday, they actually clamber over our war memorials to our war dead. Recently been an MP who we discussed before, who stepped down because of threats to his life from Muslim extremists. And everyone in the Commons and elsewhere sort of said, oh, well, how sad. And I don't recognize that. I remember the generation of Margaret Thatcher, who, when the Brighton bomb went off, the conference bomb, the Brighton hotel bomb that was meant to kill her, did kill a number of her friends and many others, stood outside the next day and said the conference.
I think we need to make the point that that was by the IRA, incidentally.
Conference will go ahead. We will never give in to the men of violence. I don't know where that spirit has gone. When the MP who said he would stand down because of threats to his life stood down, he said that one of the reasons was that his murdered colleague, Sir David Amess, was murdered by Ali Harbi Ali. And one of the other people he wanted to apparently kill was Mike Freer. Well, in an interview this week, Mike Freer was asked about this, and then the interviewer said, what motivated Ali Harbi Ali? And Mike Freer said, I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
Oh,
well,
geez.
Here's one. He was killed by an Islamist who followed jihadist.
Here comes the Islamophobia, the tendency to want to blame Muslims for whatever has happened.
Ideology. And it's a darn fool position for a man to be in, to stand up for somebody more than he's willing to stand up for himself. But I can say this on behalf of Mike Freer. The person who was apparently thinking of killing him and who did kill Sir David Amess MP was motivated by jihadist ideology. And I would have liked to have seen in the wake of that Sir David's MPs not just mourn his death as if he had died of natural causes, but to have said, we will root this ideology out of Britain wholesale. It has no place here.
And I think I don't disagree with that. It's not an ideology that we need to have in our community, and that we need to get rid of terrorists wherever they appear. No disputing that whatsoever. I agree with you, Douglas. However, I also must remind you that you forgot about the murder of Jo Cox, and that we need to highlight exactly what that was about. So on the 16th of June 2016, Jo Cox, British Labour Party politician and Member of Parliament, MP for Bartley and Spen, died after being shot and stabbed multiple times in Birstall, West Yorkshire. In November 2016, 53-year-old Thomas Alexander Mayer was found guilty of her murder and other offences connected to the killing in an act of terrorism. The judge concluded that Mayer wanted to advance white supremacy and exclusive nationalism, most associated with Nazism and its modern forms. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. And it just strikes me as convenient that that Murray will talk about Muslims and the murder, unfortunately, of David Ames. But it is sad that he doesn't consider the fact that somebody else had been murdered by a white nationalist. Now, he needs to understand, I think, that if you're going to start talking about a murder, which is horrible, and no justification, it's just horrible, get all of that, particularly for the family of the person that was murdered, the constituents. There's a wonderful video, incidentally, around that murder, whereby a coloured person who clearly was Muslim, I think, was talking about how wonderful the politician was. But with regard to Jo Cox, who was killed by a white nationalist, no mention of that whatsoever. So if you're going to talk about one aspect of it, which is horrible, don't make it all about Muslims. Why don't we make it about white nationalists as well? So the question for me is, why did he not talk about the Jo Cox murder and chose to talk about the other instead? Because it suits his narrative. Because he's a human white excrement. That's what he is. And it comes out for all to see. You just need to think about it a little bit, I think. And there'll be lots of criticisms. I am quite sure about this particular post. Happy to read them. May not respond to all of them, particularly if they're offensive. So subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications if you wish, and then you can contact me on this particular email address if you also wish to. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.